You are listening to The Huddle. Joining us right now for an opponent preview, it's ESPN's Josh Weinfuss. Josh, how's it going?
I am great. How are you?
Fantastic. And it's going to be a really interesting battle between these two teams. The Arizona Cardinals, a much better team than I was expecting. Josh, you obviously know this team much better. So is what they've done this year in terms of being pretty competitive, a great year for Kyler, surprising to you in any way, or did you kind of see it coming?
It's a good question. A little bit of both. You know, I'm not totally surprised or as surprised as other people, just because you saw the pieces there, right? You saw the individual talent, you saw the skill players, and you kind of saw what they put together at the end of last season. So, but I am surprised at kind of that 4-game winning streak. Like, I was a little surprised at how well they started to play together at that point in the season. With all that being said, like, this team it has all the components to be a really good team. It's just can't put it all together yet. So when they came close against Buffalo in week 1, and then when they almost beat the Lions in week 3, you're kind of like, okay, like, this will be kind of that bridge season, right? Like, last year was kind of a rebuild waiting for Kyler to get back. This year will be that bridge, and then they rattle off 4 straight. You're like, this might be a playoff team. Like, I might have to clear my calendar in January. So a little bit of both, kind of expected because of what they have, but also a little surprised.
As far as the player goes, Josh, was it a surprise that Trey McBride was going to be the leading target getter there? I mean, he's got 14 more than Harrison Jr. Hasn't scored a touchdown yet, at least a receiving touchdown anyway. But was he a big surprise? Has he been a big surprise this year, or did they kind of know that going in?
No, it's not a surprise at all. Like, they knew he was going to be an absolute star this year. I mean, he kind of showed it last year, especially after they got they released Zach Ertz. Trey McBride took off. Like, he absolutely took off. And you know, this offseason, he built a lot of confidence. He went to tight end U. So they kind of knew coming in, like, especially with a full offseason throwing with Kyler, like, if they can get that relationship down, which they did, like, this team had very high expectations for Trey McBride, and he's fulfilled those. So, and I know you say, like, you know, he has 14 more catches than Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. also has, obviously, 7 touchdowns to Trey's 0, but he also has more yards. So I think it's also a product of him being kind of an outlet or a release valve for Kyler Murray. But the other thing is, like, he's one of the top, I'd say, 5 to 10 tight ends in this league. Yeah, I think he can make a lot of plays. He's very hard to defend. He can do a little bit of everything. And I think he's just going to keep getting better.
Hey, they haven't been able to punch it in, get it in the end zone. 5 field goals made last week, and then obviously against the Seahawks, a couple field goals there. What do you think it is? What's not connecting when it comes to this offense and being able to get in the end zone?
If I had that answer, I'd be in Vegas right now making a lot of money. You know, it's weird because they were doing it so well during their winning streak, and then they came out from the bye, and it just wasn't clicking. I think that's kind of just like kind of the ebbs and flows of the season, right? Like, things work one week and things don't work the next week. They played 2 very good teams. I think that has a lot to do with it too. You know, like, the Seahawks were able to really impact what Arizona wanted to do, and then last week the Vikings were able to do the same. You know, and I think not having Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray on the same page completely, I think, is an issue in the red zone. But also, I think it's a combination of, you know, when things don't go their way, I think they kind of lose a little bit of confidence, a little bit of steam from that locomotive offense that can just power through teams in the middle of the field. But it's weird because, you know, everything was going so right for them during that stretch. They won 4 in a row. They won 5 out of 6, and everything was going great. And then they came out from the bye, and, you know, the question heading to the bye 3 weeks ago was, what teams will come out of this bye? Will it affect them? And obviously it has. But, you know, all week we heard, you know, kind of the coach speak, execution. They just got to go down there and make plays. Like, it sounds like I'm a coach now, but, like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, they can get down there. They just have to finish. And how they do that, I mean, the little things. It's not getting backed up. They started one drive at the 19 on Sunday in Minnesota. They got backed up to like the 30. You know, it's like little things like that. And I know Kyler Murray, it's been kind of a thorn in his side throughout his whole career, especially under Cliff Kingsbury. Like, there are always the little things that affected his team. He hates it. He absolutely hates it. So I can't imagine his frustration level is very low right now.
When you're a team that's been a little up and down the way that both of these squads have, you can look back at certain games and go, I don't know that ends up being that way 10 out of 10 times. For the Seahawks, I look to the Giants game and I go, I don't know that they lose to the Giants 10 out of 10 times, but they did that day. I thought that Arizona against Seattle in Week 12 had, I wouldn't say entirely uncharacteristic, but like it's been such a good run team and Kyler had been so solid and it felt like, a down day for them overall. What would you say is the most likely aspect to their game that's most likely to change heading into Week 14?
I think getting Kyler involved early. I think the one thing is that when this team gets him out in space early in the first quarter, it changes the whole complexion of the offense because teams have to think about Kyler more. Because if when they start the game just pounding the ball with James Conner, throwing some passes to whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, and they don't run Kyler early, teams don't really have to focus on that, right? They're a two-dimensional team instead of a three-dimensional team. But when they get Kyler out early, like it not only changes the run game, it changes the pass game because he's so good throwing on the move. So if they can get him out in space, whether it's a designed run, whether it's an RPO, whether it's some sort of, just off-schedule type of play, and let him put in the back of the Seahawks defense's mind that, hey, we got to account for this guy because he's already making things happen, it could change that game. But when they don't, I feel like they take away a dynamic of this offense that is so valuable. And he doesn't want his legs to be the reason why they win. Like he doesn't want to be the kind of a key cog to this offense. But he does know that he does need to make plays in order for the offense to get going. And if they can do that early, I think it changes the game.
Hey, Josh, the guy with the third most sacks, LJ Collier, a guy that was here and just didn't click for him here. But what are you seeing from him, and what do you hear from him when he talks about his stay here in Seattle?
He doesn't really talk about it a ton. I'm sure it'll come up again, later, but we'll probably talk to him tomorrow. But really, he doesn't really talk about it a ton. And I think he's just someone who he has said in the past, like he knows what he can do. And he wants to go out and prove it. And I think he's showing that what he's capable of, because this pass rush isn't a great pass rush, right? So which makes what he's doing even more impressive, because he's able to get to the quarterback in large part on his own. Obviously they're getting pushed from everywhere, but he's making plays happen because of LJ Collier, not necessarily maybe because the edge rush is pushing the quarterback up in the pocket or something like that. So I think, he's showing they wanted him for a reason. He's big, he's strong, he's quick off the ball. Like I've been impressed with what I've seen from him this year. He played one game last year, so it really wasn't easy. We couldn't really see much from him a year ago, but I've been impressed with what I've seen from him this year, and I think he's showing what he's capable of and kind of what didn't all come to fruition up there in Seattle.
We sit back and we look at the rest of the season for the Hawks, and we come up with, okay, they got to win these, maybe split these two games. How are you guys looking at the rest of the season for the Cardinals? Seattle, New England, Carolina, L.A., then you finish with the Niners.
Well, they have to win this game. Otherwise, I think the division is going to be very hard for them to win. And I don't see the West getting a wild card team in at this rate. So they need to win this game. Obviously, the next two after this are extremely winnable. On paper, right? And then you go and you play the Rams in Week 17. They beat them. They beat the Niners in Week 18. Like, in theory, they could run the table and win the last five. But they could also lose three out of those five. They can lose. They could drop one of the two to New England or Seattle or to Carolina. The problem with this team is you don't know which team's going to show up every week. And beginning of the season, like that was a big storyline, was there was so much inconsistency that you had no idea. Like, they didn't know which team was going to show up. All we heard was great weeks of practice. We didn't know who was going to play on Sunday, right? Like, they went into the Green Bay game. They had no idea which team was going to show up, and they got beat pretty badly. But they still had a chance to win that game. A couple of small plays in that game, the outcome would have been different. But I just don't know who's going to show up for the stretch run. Like, they talk about, one game at a time, like all the stuff we hear every week from every team. But, like, they also are aware of what every game means long term. Like, they all peek at the standings. They all understand, like, if they lose this game, their chances of making the playoffs go down dramatically. And I think that that's going to be on their mind. Like it can't not be on their mind. I don't care how mentally strong you are as a player. Like you are thinking about that. But like I said, like they could go 5-0 the next 5. They could go 2-3. They can go 1-4. They can go 4-1. Like we have no idea who shows up on Sunday, but they're capable of doing all of that.
Well, I think they're going to be facing a tougher Cardinals team, at least from the Seattle point of view. I can't see Kyler being held back the way he was in Week 12. But it'll be a great battle, fun Week 14 matchup. He is ESPN's Josh Weinfuss. Thanks, Josh.
Anytime.